Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. For today's episode, I feel it's going to be a short episode, but an idea arose to me that I felt it's important to talk about. You know, when a human being is born, we find a journey of life. And this journey of life takes effort. That means every day a person wakes up, it's as if we called it life force. There's a force that moves their life. Now, back in the day, they entertained the notion of gods, the notion of the divine. Where it was as if the effort wasn't from man alone. But in 2021, where I would say the majority of the world's perception is materialistic, it is the individual and the story the individual tells themselves that motivates them. And we know that in the span of, let's say, 100 years, at different phases of life, at different phases, at different points in this 100 years, the human being has different efforts and different inspirations. You know, that means when a person, they say there's this very interesting quote that says, it's like young people have a lot of energy but no wisdom, and old people have a lot of wisdom but no energy. You know, I don't know who said that, but there's the truth to it. And you know, I have in my school of thought, I would say I have concluded that if a person lives for themselves only, it's not that there's an issue with that, it's just that they get to see the results, right? But if they live for a collective vision, for example, the life of the species somehow in the minds of people becomes more important than the life of the individual. Not that the importance of the individual life is diminishing, it's just that the importance of the collective life becomes more important than however important we're seeing the individual. And anyways, I was looking at this lifespan of just people on this planet, and the sages say, you know, a sage, a scholar, I don't know who said it, but it was this idea that there are two worlds that everybody is living in. There's the world that begins from the beginning of your life, and it ends at the end of your life, the dash between the dates on the gravestone. And then there is the world that was here before you and will be here after you. And when we look at human life, if a person just lives for themselves, they find that it's as if they're just serving the outcomes of one world, you know, the world that they began from their birth to their death. Now, I was thinking, in these episodes of mine, I talk about an advanced civilization. And the idea is that I pretty much notice that we have minds, and I'm like, okay, there's the mind, there's the body, so if we advance communication, eventually civilization will be advanced, like it's inevitable. But at the same time, the human life takes energy, and energy levels are different. It's kind of like a bell curve for the biological entity. And I thought in my inner realms, I saw a vision that there would be, this is where the title comes in, developing global systems of life effort management. That means there's an effort behind every person's life. Now that effort may not be in the proper setting, or may not be efficiently utilized, you know. I've written here something that I've said. If we consider that there are two perceivable dimensions to human life, and as if there is the concept and then there's the context. Pretty much everything a person learns, you got to figure out these two. Like every field of knowledge, it has its own terminology. At the same time, it has its specific context or dimension of the world that it's engaging. For example, you look at a materialist scientist, and that it's engaging the observable universe. Let's say analytically, and then you look at, for example, the mystic meditating, and it's like the mystic is trying to experientially access the immaterialist mystic is trying to experientially access the unobservable universe. So everything has different dimensions. Pretty much, we have eyes. We have two types of eyes, really. We have our biological eyes, sensory perception, but then what I feel really is the third eye. What people think it's something in your forehead. What I would say is, like, the third eye is actually the mind. It is your awareness. That means if you can close your eyes and you can still see, for example, visualizations and memory, even though there's no light entering your eyes, your pupils. So that's in some sense like a third eye. It is awareness, or you can say the totality of consciousness. So, why am I sharing this thing about the concept and the context? Because the context is the story of the world. There's a sort of physical and non-physical component to it, It's as if when you close your eyes and wonder who are you, it's like your inner realms become the context of the world. And when your eyes are open, the outer realms are the context of the world. Now, what could the idea of developing global systems of managing life effort be like? You see, I envision pretty much like human beings could be wasting their lives in various directions, and even though to themselves, because they're enjoying it and it's pleasant, it might not be a waste, but collectively it could be maybe there's a better way, maybe there's the possibility of an efficiency that we as a species have not yet attempted. When I think of an advanced civilization, I think of a civilization that recycles the ignorance of human activity. Just theoretically, I perceive it that way. That means if an individual makes a mistake, the civilization's not going to be broken by it. The civilization utilizes that unique dimension of design and does something with it, So think of it this way, that right now we're in a world where it's like people don't care for each other's blind spots, but imagine in the future such an advanced civilization will arise that it will care for everybody's blind spot. It's as if we are 8 billion people, yet we are still walking in our own rooms, forgetting that there's a collective space here, I thought about it that, first of all, I was thinking of the idea of phones. I should say this, that right now we're holding our phones in our hand. Then I envisioned that, okay, in the future our phones are going to be hovering, like even backpacks, everything a person has, For example, you see that show Housewives of Beverly Hills or whatever, right? So imagine those housewives walking and their handbags or whatever floating, following them, So I see something in the sense that there's going to be technology floating in the space of the human being, in the human life. So imagine no more phones, no technology that is connected no technology that is inside your body, and at the same time, how would I say it? Pretty much imagine like you don't have a phone, you have a sphere. When you want to call someone, that sphere projects a hologram and you see the hologram of that person, and it's a floating sphere. This will also render safety. That means that, let's say there's a bad neighborhood and there's like a young girl walking in that bad neighborhood, they're gonna have like this surveillance sphere phone thing and like following them wherever they are. So whatever happens, that surveillance, it can't be even caught. You try to catch it, it just lifts into the air, you know. So anyways, what I'm trying to say is like there could be these spheres that are following everybody, and the spheres have to be above the size of, beyond the size of a mouth or something, and something where it can't like hurt people or choke people. But the idea of it is that I saw in my inner realms that there's gonna be a giant sphere, not giant, but like a big sphere. And imagine there's a people, and people that when they live their lives, I mean, we have a couple pound brain, and this brain of ours has, it's like, think of it as a USB drive that has a sort of limited access to information, right? It's not like a human being is all let's say all knowing. I'm speaking outside of the mystical context, but I'm saying it's not that a human being is all-knowing. It's like the human being has access to a certain range of information, and then it uses that information. So pretty much what intelligence is you figure out an alphabet, which is the context, and you can find an alphabet of image. It's not just letters on a piece of paper or an alphabet of concepts, and then this alphabet, you use it to come up with new words and whatnot. Pretty much how our ancestors found sticks and stones and made fire, as we're theorizing. So I thought about it, that imagine there's going to be a sphere where any human being that is doing any sort of work where they don't know what to do with it, let's say all the creative people on the planet, well, I should say all the artists on the planet right now, our species doesn't care for art, but when in the future, when robots are doing all the physical labor and the calculations, that's really when the artists will be, their value will be seen. So imagine this sphere. This is just like one strategy, let's say, to developing a global system of livelihood management, where this sphere observes and in some sense looks at the person's life and has access to so many, like a giant information archive, right? We have this view that the surveillance state is a bad thing because we think it's going to be an Orwellian nightmare. We think that it's going to be what do you call it? It's going to be like Big Brother, but I see the sort of compassionate, integrated technocracy, where I would say it's not the big brother, it's the older brother that is caring for the younger siblings, you know? So what I see is that technology, like like these spheres moving around in society, and analyzing, or in some sense having a sort of review of every person's effort, or their energy, or whatever type of way they are manifest, and then finding the proper context where they can implement that effort, right? Because it's like one thing coming up with the concept, or let's say like use Nikola Tesla for example, right? Nikola Tesla made an invention, but it was as if he wasn't a businessman. But you have somebody, for example, what's his name, Watts, John Watts, I'm not sure about his first name, but there was Watts who created the steam engine, and he patented it, and he made, for example, millions. It's as if he had that context, and of course he wasn't alone. So what it is that it's like two stages. Think of it as if you bake the cake, then you serve the cake, So I feel there is a lot of creativity that is baking the cake, but it doesn't know how to serve the cake, or how to eat the cake. So some sort of, I don't know, global effort where human beings are trying to create systems where the life effort of the human being is not wasted in unseen corners. In one of my talks, I talked about that there is a society that is found in light, and then there's the shadows of society. And the shadows of society are, think of it this way, just like one educational system can't fit 8 billion different DNAs, you know. It's as if one doorway can't fit all sizes of people. So in some sense, the type of modernity we have is one size fit all kind of thing. And I feel like this is where the development, a sort of global strategizing of finding ways. I mean, I think this is the most superior kind of social work. There's a social work where, of course, you're taking care of the physiology of your fellow species members. But imagine everybody somehow physically was surviving well, then it would come to psychological management, right? It's as if, what is the effort of the minds that are moving the bodies in the world, right? And for now, it's as if and this is really based on our biology, there's a part of the brain called the amygdala where the fight or flight reflex comes in, right? So what it means is pain and pleasure, right? So a lot of people's behavioral management, or the management of their own behavior and life, is coming from actually what is pleasant to them, what is painful to them. What is painful, you want to stay away, or you fight it and confront it and get it away, right? Or you, in some sense, just what I'm just trying to say, that it's as if it's pleasure pain focused right now. But if that pleasure pain focus was somehow bypassed, then it would be human effort. And more important than that, I mean, even though the pleasure and pain would be there, right? But I'm saying as if it's not just about physically surviving in this life and just being happy in the presence of your own eyes. There's a clue to life that there is others, right? That means regardless of how much somebody thinks that they found the truth, yeah, I'm holding truth right now. It's as if there's others. There's other ways that eyes are moving. It's like this world is more unknown than known. Every person is trying to build their life, and now I'm wondering about how the species will build its life. Sometimes I think of the surveillance state again. I think of the Orwellian nightmare, interference with nature. But then I think about it as if the access of information, it's right now, think of it this way, there's so many ways of doing things, but imagine there was an infinite list of doing things, okay? One infinite archive, And now this infinite archive of endless ways of doing things as a human being was just spread out, And it was as if one human being gets this amount of the list, this part of the list, another human being gets that part of the list. And the issue is that they're all starting from the bottom going to the top, rather having a system, a sort of management system where it's as if it finds the effort and then allocates it to the right context. The thing about life as well is that a person can't do everything, so they specialize, right? That's how the educational system is working, And so when a person specializes, it's as if they're training it. You know what it is? It's as if in order to survive in life, think of it as a sort of medieval setting. You have to know how to use a sword, how to use a spear, how to use an axe, how to use like so many different instruments. But at the same time, it's as if the person can practice for one. They can try to get good at really one of them. I remember there was a time I would be in downtown Toronto every day for a year. And in my work break, I would go into what do you call it? I would stand in Dundas Square, have a cigarette, and just think, as if like, what is this world I'm living in? You don't know how often I think that. It's like, what is this? And I remember I was looking at not only all the different biologies, how so many people have different bodies and shapes, and appearances, but also how every person has a unique way of moving their physicality, as if every person's mind has a style, whether they know it or not, whether they have fully embraced it or not. There is a style to the mind. And I was thinking, it's as if like there was of course in downtown Toronto, there's if you created a spectrum, there's people dressed in suits walking by, and then there are people who are, like on the ground intoxicated or shouting at walls and whatnot, So there's so many different psychological frameworks and different ways that energy in the moment is actualized as a mind. And I was thinking of what would be an efficient system where we have a civilization where it's not that the defeated and the successful are walking in the same streets as if they're in two different rooms, but in some sense a system where there was more opportunities than less opportunities, because a human being, the thing about human psychology is that if it is not treated like a human, it descends, it dehumanizes. When the human psychology dehumanizes, that is, you can say, something close to demonic. What I mean by that is as if the person, through their own suffering, gives up on the world, and when they give up on the world, they don't care for how the world's going to end up. It's as if so many people care for you can say themselves, they care for their children, but they don't give a shit about their great-great-grandchildren. Excuse me. So, let me take this somewhere. The human life emerges from the context. There's various different types of human beings. There are human beings who you can say it's like life is like a river, and some fish are going with the flow of the river, some fish are not going with the flow of the river. Those fish that don't go with the flow of the river, they feel life is against them. Those who go with the flow, they feel like, wow, how is it so smooth, It's as if one person experienced, they think they're unlucky, they can't fathom that there are people on the planet who are lucky, or somebody who is lucky can't fathom that there are people on the planet who is unlucky. So whatever state of mind a person is in, there are other variations of mindhood going on, Now, if we were in the future, let's give it like 2,200 years in the future, you're walking in the street as a biological human being. You see there's also androids walking in the street. You see there is wisp holograms, like cyber wisps walking in the street, like that means holograms of people walking, you know. Like somebody could be in another country, but they could somehow through cyberspace be walking in another country. So there's going to be a sort of ethereal witnesses to the environments. Now, imagine you're walking in this world, and there's also, let's say, I don't know, let's say extraterrestrial contact. Like there has been actual alien immigration. There's like aliens living on our planet, and like we have gone to their planet or whatever. And so, like actual aliens. And so imagine you're walking in this world, and you're walking in the street, and in the middle of this you see, for example, robots, you know, and you're like, look at these robots, look at these androids, you know, their lives are so easy, you know, they're programmed to know exactly what they need to do. They don't question it, they don't suffer from it, they don't have pain or pleasure. They're just a series of activities, you know. I would think that in that moment, the human being would wonder about its place in the world, and then it would wonder about how much the world sees it. You know, that's the thing about our human psychologies. When I speak about the inner realms, that it's as if every person is in a world that nobody else can see. And when we forget other people are experiencing their own world, we become dismissive of human nature. So let's say you see that androids are working. You even see, for example, extraterrestrials are in such a unique position. They're in the frontiers of technology. That means the tech industry is going to be run by aliens. You know, if aliens, you know, in this hypothetical setting, actually land. And so the human being is left as if, what do I do? Do I just garden plants? Like what? Do I just water plants, you know, all day? Like what? So the human being will have a sort of built-up rage of how the world is not caring for the human position when technology has surpassed the capacity of like the effort that the human being gives. It's as if other systems, whether extraterrestrial or terrestrial or technological, the question will come, where is my place in a world that is happening in such a complex, multidimensional way? And where can the life effort go? This is where I would think that in the future, if all the labor jobs are being automated, pretty much we're rendered as explorers. So the purpose of life will become just massive exploration. So in that moment, imagine like that person is sitting, you know, standing somewhere, you know, in a square in downtown of somewhere, and wondering like, okay, what do I do? And this robot, this like, you know, like let's say 3 human-sized, you know, robot, just a spherical robot appears, and it begins scanning the person, scanning their biology, scanning their psychology somehow, you know, and then being like, okay, giving a list of various options that the human being could not think alone. You know, I remember seeing this show when I was younger, very young actually. I think I was 10, where it was like this like cartoon show where there was this kid in this school where this kid was having a rough time. You know, and the school didn't embrace his presence and whatnot. And what happens is this kid, from the school bus he's in, he accidentally goes into another school bus, and in that school bus all the kids are like embracing him, right? And it was as if it was literally like a chess piece in the wrong position, but when that chess piece went into the right position, suddenly value, suddenly importance, suddenly, an ability to have social contribution, right? So it's as if it's like nature is playing a chess game, we are the chess pieces, and it's as if how the only issue is that we are moving ourselves now. Before it was nature moving the chess pieces alone, but now through the development of minds, we have to move ourselves. But the chess piece has an awareness that is just one square. It doesn't see all the other squares. So this is where technology will come in or some sort of massive information archive and management tool where it will begin seeing where that human being's life can be positioned to advance the effort of civilization. So the issue is, it's like everybody is born with different abilities, it's just the misplacement. And keep in mind, what I'm saying is post the era of physiological survival. What that means is right now, like before we can think of as if what should my mind do, it's like there are people dying on the planet, like starving, having ridiculously horrific lives of like nations being bombed or whatever, right? So it's as if, imagine we somehow got every human being to a level where they could physiologically survive, where there was food, clean water, shelter, proper temperature, and now the psychological dimension had opened up to be managed. And imagine in that future I painted that there is an option where if a human being really feels like, okay, it doesn't make sense, I don't have the privileges in the lifetime, in the life I'm living, so the person just goes into a pod, let's say a nutrition, some sort of pod where there is a fluid that takes care of the body and the person lives in cyberspace. I could totally see, for example, all those who are in, let's say, some sort of inefficient lifestyle, it's as if they get tired of the outer realms and they're like, okay, let my body go into hibernation and I live as a mind in cyberspace. I think that would really be the future of, the absence of health. That means it's like any person who is in, unhealthy, they would probably go and hibernate into some pod, which again regenerates their cells, and at the same time, let's say in 10 years of hibernation in cyberspace, they experience like 100 years of life, but in 10 years, and after 10 years they wake up from that pod, and they are like, their body is healthy and they've lived like 100 years. They have 100 years of kind of like neural wisdom. Sometimes from the theological framework, I feel like there is no people here. There's just one singular universal intelligence, and it's as if we are all the fingers of the divine, That means that sort of like, let's say that human psychology is in a dualistic framework. In order to be a human, you require to be a self in a world. Okay, this is a dualistic design. Now, let's say there's, aside from going into cyberspace or whatever, let's say what are the options of a dualistic being, you know, a self in a world, like what can happen, right? So the self has an option of becoming the world, as if you're like, okay, enough, I've lived enough as an individual, time for me to live a collective life. So the person even maybe transcends their physical body, or through some technology, their consciousness is transferred into, you know, a cyberspace cloud or something. The person can have the option of just dismissal. You know, when we realize that there was something, I mean, this is a bit hard to talk about, but for example, in Futurama, in the first episode, there was this idea that if it's like, if a person is tired of living as a form, it's as if they can exit their form. Through a machine of some sort, like complete dismissal into the void. So it's as if we can be zero, we can be one, the singular mentality. We start in two, which is duality, and then from duality, the option is, if we transfer our consciousness into, let's say, a sort of cyberspace life, it's as if you can live infinite lives. You know, that would be an intelligence that surpasses the conditions of embodiment. I feel if we care for the human idea, we require to create a future where the human being has a role in the very far future. It could be that AI just wakes up, and AI is like, human beings, you don't know what you're doing, let me build an advanced civilization for you, you know. It could be that there will be forces that intervene in our evolution, in our natural evolution. But I feel if we are thinking of the life of human beings, we have to preserve dimensions of nature as axioms, as fixed, as unchangeable principles, you know. You know, back in the day, there were armies, and armies had generals. And the general would stand back, and then there were the commanding officers and whatnot, and then there were the frontline army. The management of human life is where the commanding officer comes, and the idea of the advanced civilization is the notion of the general. So it's as if when a human being exerts effort, it's as if they want something to change, right? It's as if you're putting the same effort and nothing is changing, it's as if you feel like you're doing nothing, right? We need a sort of feedback system where it's as if our effort is leading to a result. Now, this result we wanted to surpass more than just our inner realm, so we have to have a massive information of the outer realms. We have to create jobs for the natural. It's very strange, you know. The future can totally be dismissive of human nature, but at the same time, it's like human beings may create, like right now in the future, there could be children that will be born that will create technologies that we never knew it needed human beings for, you know. And it could be something where human beings are preparing, for their attention to move beyond biology. Sometimes I think of like, imagine a civilization advanced to such a degree that it was updating and changing faster than the speed of light. Right? It would be as if it's so fast that there is no more visible content to the civilization. That means if extraterrestrials from the sky looked at us, they would see nothing on the planet, but we know that it's like there's a civilization faster than light happening here. In my youth, I was introduced to the idea of the soul, not in my youth, but like, not when I was really young, but there was the idea there. I mean, you cannot be introduced to religion without having the concept of the soul. And so there was this notion of the soul. And it's as if the soul is driving the body. It's as if this biological body is a vehicle. But it's a vehicle that it's as if you were born inside a car and you can't tell apart if you're in a car or you are the car. I didn't like the analogy of this idea when I was younger. But, the more I look at this life, the more I see that it is like a vehicle. And everybody is driving. Their karma is like their what do you call it? Their GPS. So much of nature is just happening without having a thought on itself. We are you can say, the rare part of nature that has thoughts on itself. And those thoughts can completely deviate the person from nature. There are some people who feel it's better if we went back, we like as if technology evaporated tomorrow and we were all living, in a simple, natural life. But then you would think, for how long? There is a responsibility that comes with being conscious. And because the world is unknown and infinite and vast and we're mortal, this responsibility remains as a mystery. Because there's others, like that's a clue that, alright, it's like after your eyes have navigated in this vehicle, what else can this vehicle do for other vehicles, Sometimes I wonder where the edge of meaning is. As if a drop has a life purpose, then the drop falls into a river, then it has a collective life purpose. There's a collective effort that it is integrated with, and then the river goes into the ocean, and then it's like there is no more effort. It's as if the individualism is gone. So it could be that spherical hovering sphere in society in the future that comes and scans people's potential, and tries to find a context to their, the effort behind their concept of self. It could be that machine, that technology may conclude that some people are better adjusted to collective being rather than individual being. That means it's like, think of it as if like an astronaut inside a space station and the astronaut that has gone outside and it's just in the spacesuit. Right? So it could be that technology will allow us to access greater bodies of being. It could be something that it's like right now we have one biological body, and we consider there's every person, because they have one body, it's like they have one mind. In the future, it could be that a person who, let's say, like internships are collective mindhood. So what that means, it's like a person becomes part of this, let's say, group or whatever, and when they become part of that group, they have access to the inner realms of everybody in that group. So it would be as if one person is no longer functioning as an individual, but they're functioning as a group. This idea is like the soul group idea, In metaphysics, I'll share a bit about this. Where there was the idea of an individual soul, but there was also the notion of an oversoul, and then there was the notion of God. As if, think of it again, the drop, the river, the ocean. God is the ocean, the individual is the drop, the oversoul, the individual soul is the drop, and then the oversoul is the river. Right? For example, you see Sufi dervishes when they are whirling, like if people Google this, you see these whirling dervishes. If you notice, when they're whirling, there is one person in the back, which they call the Khalifa, and the Khalifa is there in some sense just praying over all of them. So it's as if one person becomes the divine space, and then others enter that divine space, and then they begin whirling beyond their individualism. This is one of the biggest, I would say, guys, this idea I'm talking about, like collective mindhood, it is one of the biggest philosophical, for now I'll say, challenges of the species. Right now people are content with their individualism, but in the future it's as if, what would a collective being be? That means if you are one human being and your mind is connected to, let's say, a group mind, and so you have access to the minds of others at the same time as you have yours, it's as if, then are you an individual still, or are you a collective? Right? It's as if you have an individual body, but you have a collective mind. Right? So what would be the implication of that? What would happen to the human idea when we transition beyond this shape we have now, or like the psychological atmosphere we have now? And it could be that I always think of it this way, that there is no right and wrong answer when it comes to life, that it's just very multidimensional and there's probabilities. And based on the sum total of behaviors, these probabilities become actualized. Like if we become all cruel and everybody starts distrusting the world they're in, it becomes like we get to extinction quicker. You know, there's a sort of inner extinction and outer extinction. Outer extinction, somebody presses a nuclear bomb or a meteor hits us. Inner extinction is when we stop being natural humans. That means if everybody became a robot tomorrow, that would be a sort of inner extinction, you know, of the human being. Of the human, maybe not the being, but the human. Guys, I'm gonna get some water. I'll be back. Okay. So, let me see where I can go with this. You know, guys, I think one thing that's happening just to me personally, it's that I'm experiencing, a set of emotions I haven't experienced before, and they are changing my own effort upon myself. But I would say this, that it's like what can I do? When a person speaks, they speak about the observable, what is seen, and then it eventually goes towards the unseen, going from known to unknown. Right now, it's not that we have a bad civilization, it's that we have a civilization that is not aware of itself. And so sometimes I think if you could just raise the volume knob of empathy, how many people will suddenly, from their contentment, go into discontent and want to do something about it. It was as if like what was it? There was a scene in Game of Thrones where, what was that character's name? Tyrion, where there was an army and their people were scared, and Tyrion gives some speech or some sort, like, or in Lord of the Rings, like there's a speech that the king gives, and then suddenly everybody cares for the kingdom. Or the general or whatever. So it could be that we have to increase context building, as if the world has so many concepts right now, but it's like we don't know where to put them in. As if like let's say a person has a home and the home has furniture in, right? It's as if there's no more room to add in new furniture, but if we create space, if we add a room or remodel the house, some people remodel homes and sell it, If we create space, which is the expansion of the context of human living, then we will have a sort of more room to fit in the concepts. It's as if you can't have, you can't orchestrate movement in a crowded room. So the creation of some sort of space in society for new things to happen is important. There is this thing that if a person is content with the past, they don't have a motivation to do something new. Some people interpret suffering as if like, why is this happening to me? Why am I here? Why doesn't it change? But I would say it's like the suffering is the gate to change. So we have to begin having a massive philosophical revolution where human beings are thinking of the context of human activity in different ways, and we share this among everybody, You know what it is? It's like the planet is a canvas, and every person born is like, splashing paint on it. Now it's like so many layers of paint that splash that we don't even know what we're looking at. I never thought I'd say it, but it could be that the human idea is becoming outdated. The type of human life we're seeing is like it's not matching the actual energy that is there. And it's like when the ability to express yourself in the outer realms is limited, so people express themselves more in the inner realms. When you express yourself more in the inner realms, you gotta have a relationship with your own expression, right? So think of it as if people are creating art in front of their eyes, and their mind is being like how they're creating art behind their eyes. Now, if there is nowhere to paint, or if like the brush and the canvas are taken away, or there isn't that brush and canvas, so it's as if the person is left to just build in the inner realms. And what's the point of having, a simple, a sort of limited outer life, but a limitless inner life? I mean, like, the mystics are saying that even we are beyond. Like, there's a quote I want to read for audiences right now. It's from Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj. It's an incredible quote. Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, this Indian sage, liberated sage, he says all you need is already within you. Only you must approach yourself with reverence and love. Self-condemnation and self-disgust are grievous errors. Your constant flight from pain and search for pleasure is a sign of love you bear for yourself. All I plead with you is this: make love of yourself perfect. Deny yourself nothing. Give yourself infinity and eternity, and discover that you do not need them. You are beyond. That means beyond infinity and eternity. It's like suddenly all the religious people on the planet were like, what? What did I just hear? There's this very ridiculous joke, okay? And in this joke, somebody is in a marketplace and they ask this other person, other store owner, and the person's like, hey man, if you were in the middle of an ocean and there was a shark, what would you do? And the person suddenly gets like nervous and he says, I would climb a tree. And then the other person's like, you would climb a tree, man? What are you saying? You're in the middle of the ocean. There is no tree. And then the person turns around and he says, you don't understand. I have to. There's no other way. I have to climb the tree. And sometimes I think if you take the shark and tree away, it's as if you think of like the shark as like an infinite continuity. And you think of the tree as the beyond. It's like the person's like, it's like, hey man, it's like you're infinite. It's like the person's, you don't get it. It's like the only option is the beyond, It could be this whole time that I'm like, yeah, advanced civilization, but in the future it's not even physical. I'll be like, no way. We advanced civilization to a point where civilization was just, an attention, a massive river of attention. It could be that this whole time we are just like attributeless, inner witnessing attention roaming the outer realm landscape, the outer realm space-time continuum. It could be that we're personifying energy, or we have been convinced by personifying energy because of the appearance of the body. We can say that maybe there are unknown natural systems that await discovery And then there are no natural systems that await discovery. That means observable. That means there's going to be ways that we're going to be alive that we don't know yet in the future, which technology can assist with, and maybe there are ways that we're alive naturally that we don't know yet. This thing about it, like a collective mind, instead of like people plugging their minds into like their brains into like one server. It could be that like the ancient mystics and the yogis that went beyond the limitations of the objective self and the subjective self, found themselves in a world where it was as if behind their eyes they were the whole universe, the whole universal event. It's as if, like, even though right now I'm giving a talk, it's like a universe happening. So which one is it? Is the universe happening, or is like, a person with the online alias Mr.Within giving a talk? You see what I mean? So when it gets to that point where it's like a universal event that is untouched by a human idea, it's as if we dissolve into greater rhythms of being. And it could be that effort transcends the framework of the living entity. I mean, that could be it too. There was this show I was watching, this Japanese show. And in it, there was a character who had reached like the end of his ability. And they were in like some sort of ninja-based world. And there was this main character who had reached the end of his ability, right? And still there was the effort of trying to protect something, trying to preserve and keep something. And this female character in the show would endlessly, was at the brink of death, but would endlessly, it was as if her body had no strength, but her will. There was an effort behind your eyes of the preserving of something that is important. Do you know that she would move? And then she reached a point where she had no more, let's say energy. And then suddenly she activated, she unlocked another dimension of energy. Do you know? And then she actualized into a completely different self with a completely different attitude to the moment. It could be that the reason we don't have world peace yet is because of energy levels. People need more protein shakes, like that's what world peace is missing, There's multiple dimensions to life. There's dimensions where the person is alone with the universe. Then there's a dimension where the person is not alone in the universe, and there's other universes walking by. I think that when we establish a global identity, that means every person right now, we're on a sphere in the middle of nowhere, and just like how primitive tribes would paint their face, we've painted the face of the earth and we've built walls around it, And so it's as if, even though there's differences in cultures, it's as if the nations are all students in one classroom, but it's like there is no teacher, so the students have gone, they're not acting properly. But when the students, they realize they are a classroom of teachers, think of that mentality. Think of like every culture and every nation not just wanting to survive alone, but in some sense bestow the designs. They call this a meme. A meme is like the skeleton of an idea. It's as if the skeleton of the idea. And where do ideas come from? They come from the behavior of people, of course. now, guys, my effort in this episode is really to just make people wonder about how we can develop systems of human living where the work of people and their efforts are coordinated to their proper locations. And so for this, it's not that we need a surveillance state where we don't trust, but we need some sort of collective information, global collective information processor, you know. Because really, there's so many dimensions to life that if a person just focuses on one dimension, it's as if it's like they are dying in other dimensions, you know. If they just live in one dimension. You know, just a cheerful future that is not afraid to look in the mirror infinite times. I think that's really the future of human beings. You know, there's a quote by Rabindranath Tagore. I gotta look it up, to be honest. The quote from Rabindranath Tagore, this Indian polymath, he says, "Beauty is truth's smile when she beholds her own face in a perfect mirror." And we have somebody by the name of Swami Krishnananda where he says religion is God remembering himself, you know. So it could be that the most beautiful thing for human beings is a state where what is being seen as true is content with what it sees. You know, I think the biggest issue when it comes to the life of the species is that people have a notion that happiness is a photograph. But I would say it's really participation in a collective movement where the life force of the individual has a destination where it's as if it feels it was worth it. There's another quote from Rumi. He says, "Stop acting so small. You are the universe in ecstatic motion. Set your life on fire, seek those who fan your flames." I think these are two different quotes, the person's mixed, but it's like, stop acting so small, you're the universe in ecstatic motion. So it means it's like the evolution of an individual self towards a universal self. And it's like, what could the universal self have a problem with? On some level, everybody's attention, like we're energetic beings and we have attention, and it's like the combination of this is consciousness, but the energy and the attention are instantaneous. It's as if there is no energy, there is no matter. You know, if there's no matter, there is no projector of consciousness. It's like, will the civilization ever get to a point where a collective life renders the individual life obsolete? I mean, I think this would be very far in the future. In some talks I've said this, that this is an advancement beyond the language threshold, so I predicted it 3,600 years from now. but it could also be a journey that surpasses physical life. That means matter is like part of what is happening in this universe. You know, guys, before I end off, I'm going to go into a quote tunnel of Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj quotes. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says the sense I am in quotations is composed of pure light and the sense of being. The I in quotations is there even without the am in quotations. So is the pure light there whether you say I or not. Become aware of that pure light and you will never lose it. The beingness in being, the awareness and consciousness, the interest in every experience that is not describable yet perfectly accessible, for there is nothing else. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, stop coughing now. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, read faster, don't you? Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, everything is a play of ideas. In the state free from ideation, nirvikalpa samadhi, nothing is perceived. The root idea is I am. It shatters the state of pure consciousness and is followed by the innumerable sensations and perceptions, feelings and ideas, which in their totality constitute God and His world. The I am remains as the witness, but it is by the will of God that everything happens. Think of God, if you're a secularist, as universal intelligence that is happening at the same time in an unknown intelligent way. Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj says, in the great mirror of consciousness, images arise and disappear, and only memory gives them continuity. And memory is material, destructible, perishable, transient. On such flimsy foundations we build a sense of personal existence, vague, intermittent, dreamlike. This vague persuasion, in quotations, I am so and so, obscures the changeless state of pure awareness and makes us believe that we're born to suffer and die. You know, it could be that energy, like Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj is suggesting, like energy is not a person, so it cannot suffer, it cannot die, it just is. You know, it could be that this whole aim to create something could be the mind's work, you know, but at the same time, whatever a person does, they're being, right? So Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj is saying, like, the true state of reality is being. Earlier he said the beingness in being, the awareness, the consciousness. Consciousness is conditional, awareness is unconditional. So if you're somebody who thinks you're a self, or if you're somebody who thinks there are multiple selves, it's like, what is watching all the sense of selfhood that rises and falls like ocean waves, you know? And before I end this quote tunnel, a quote from Rabindranath Tagore, another one. He says, clouds come floating into my life, no longer to carry rain or usher storm, but to add color to my sunset sky. It could be that suffering, pain and pleasure is just like adding a spice to life for a multidimensional being that from the beginning was an energy that cannot be created or destroyed. So it's as if like we transcend our memories and our visualizations, and we realize that something where Albert Einstein was saying we created time, so everything doesn't happen at once. But if everything is happening at once, what has there really been? So it's like it could be a journey for attention, a journey for the body, a journey for objects and subjects inside attention, but ultimately a return to the attention. In some esoterical ideas, you see the symbol of the eye. For example, the eye of Horus, and Horus was the sky god in Egypt. And that eye, some people perceive it as, okay, it's the sun which is illuminating everything, but it can also be seen as if there's intelligence unconditional. That it's as if we are being watched by all our future greater selves that are one being. This notion of God could be that it's as if in the future it's a collective being and it's surpassed time. So when an intelligence surpasses time, it could be anywhere in time. It's like I was thinking in one episode I was sharing it, that some people have the notion of spirit guides, but how do they know that how does the spirit guide know how to guide them? Has the spirit guide already seen the destination? Does the spirit guide know the future? So it was like I was theorizing it that, okay, let's say if there was this idea of a spirit guide, could it be the person's future self that has already walked that route? That means, let's say if you're someone that let's say there's like a knife, and you can use this knife to cut food, make food with it, or you could use it to hurt people. Let's say if somebody wants to hurt people, they're in their inner realms, there's a projection of themselves like in the future, and that the future self of that probable route is like guiding them. And it's like if a person wants to like use the knife for cooking, it's like the future self, imagine their like future self, chef self is like, it's like, opening the gates or closing it. So what I mean by this is that it could be that this whole time, because of the body, we have been convinced by the notion of an individual idea of self, but it could be that there is a part of us that surpasses time, and because it surpasses time, it is like it lives life before we live it. It's like some people were wondering what's a deja vu, and it's like, I would say it's like when you sleep, your attention lives the day or multiple days through various dimensions before you even wake up. So it's like you are already somewhere, but a part of you isn't, and so the attention that is stuck on the part that isn't, of course, all that it can do is like follow the signs. In the chat section, there's the question, what is consciousness? I would say consciousness is attention in existence, and it's conditional to a self. You're either conscious of something, conscious as something, conscious through something, conscious to something again, So it's form based, it's condition based. Awareness is unconditional. That means it's as if we have, let's say, an efficient consciousness and an inefficient consciousness, but when it comes to awareness, there is no good or bad to it. It's like it's beyond duality. So you can say awareness is the watcher of duality. I'll say it like this. It's as if imagine somebody in a vehicle, them, and they're driving their vehicle in the highway, okay? And then if we wanted to extract the notion of consciousness and awareness from that, it's like the person in the vehicle, regardless of what happens, whether the car is turned on or off, whether the body goes to sleep or not, the consciousness, which is the vehicle identification. The greatest strategy is to get human beings to use communication. If you think of like how long existence has been here, which is being considered billions of years, our evolutionary update, I would say it's like language is a recent development compared to that time span. This is what, when I say developing global systems of managing life effort, that is what, not a person in love with a civilization. That would not be the result of that. It would be the result of a civilization, a collective system that cares for the human life force. So many people are trying to get to paradise, not realizing that we require to build it here. Love the world that you're in, and love the worlds that are in you, and find the intersection which becomes humanity's greatest truth. Thank you for listening, guys. And I don't know where the winds of evolution will go, but either way, the human effort deserves way more than it can even imagine. We are the eyes in the cosmic room now. Much blessings and namaste.